Alex Carter had never imagined that a moment in his life would be defined by the silence of an alien queen. He had heard stories of otherworldly encounters, of strange beings with powers beyond human comprehension, but nothing could prepare him for this. The Elythians were a species unlike any Alex had studied in the human archives, cold, calculating, and distant. Their culture was built on isolation and dominance, with no room for weakness. They ruled over vast star systems with an iron grip, showing no mercy, no emotion. To them, peace was a luxury, not a necessity. Alex's mission was simple: negotiate with the Elythian queen, Ileana. Humanity had been at odds with her people for years, and the fate of the galaxy seemed to hang in the balance. If negotiations failed, it would mean war, and Alex knew that war meant death for countless innocent lives. The meeting took place in a grand hall made of shimmering metal, with towering walls that seemed to stretch endlessly toward the sky. The air was thick with the scent of something foreign, something ancient. As Alex stood before the queen, he felt a deep sense of unease. The room was cold, and the eyes of the Ilithian warriors standing at attention watched him intently. Ileana sat on a throne made of smooth stone, her pale skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her hair was silver, cascading like a waterfall down her back. Her eyes were sharp, piercing through Alex, as if she could see every secret he held. He had read about her, studied her image in countless reports. But seeing her in person, he could feel the weight of her presence. She was no mere leader. She was a force of nature. Human. Ileana's voice was soft, but there was no mistaking the power behind it. State your purpose! Alex's heart raced, but he steadied himself. He had trained for this moment. His voice was calm, measured. I am here to prevent war. Our people have no wish to fight.
We seek a peaceful resolution. Her gaze didn't waver. Peace?
Your kind cannot even agree with one another. What makes you think you can negotiate with us? Alex took a deep breath. The silence in the room felt oppressive.
Because we have no choice.
The alternative is destruction. The queen's lips curled into a faint smile, but it wasn't one of kindness. It was a smile of amusement, as if she were humoring a child. We are the Elythians. We have lived for millennia. Your kind is new, fragile. Your lives mean little in the grand scheme of things. Alex felt his heart tighten. The words cut deep, but he didn't flinch, because peace is worth more than power. It's worth more than control. I believe your people know that deep down. You don't want to keep fighting forever. Ileana leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. What do you know of our history? Of the bloodshed we have endured, peace is a lie.
The galaxy is chaos, and chaos is our strength.
Alex didn't respond immediately. He thought of the lives he had seen lost in the wars back home, of the soldiers who had fought for a future they would never see. He thought of the families who had been torn apart, of the children who would grow up in the ruins of their parents' dreams. I know this, Alex said softly. You're tired. I can see it in your eyes. You've been fighting for so long you've forgotten what peace feels like. But peace is possible. We can find it together. For a long moment there was only silence. Alex could hear the soft hum of the air filters in the room, the faint echo of his own heartbeat. Ileana's gaze never left him. Her expression remained unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, something flickering beneath the cold exterior. He wasn't sure if it was surprise or skepticism, but it was there. I have seen many humans come before me, Ileana said at last. None of them have ever spoken to me like you. You have no power here, no weapons, no armies. Why should I listen to you? Alex's voice was steady, but his words were filled with sincerity. Because I understand you. I understand the weight of your choices. I understand what it means to carry the burden of a people's hopes and fears. You're not just a queen, you're a person. And I see the struggle in you. Ileana's eyes flickered, just for a moment. Her expression softened, the edges of her stern demeanor softening. She tilted her head slightly, as though considering his words. And what do you expect me to do with this? Understanding. Alex stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't want to fight. I want to listen. I want to help! The queen studied him for a long time. The silence between them stretched on, thick and heavy. Then, without warning, she spoke. I have never heard those words before, she said quietly. Not from anyone, human or otherwise. You speak of understanding, of peace, but I have seen only the destruction that follows when weak words are spoken. The galaxy does not bend to kindness, human. It bends to power. Alex didn't respond right away. He knew the truth of her words, but he also knew there was something more. Something deeper. He wasn't sure what it was yet, but he felt it. It was in the way her eyes held his, the way she had paused before answering him. There was a part of Ileana that was listening, even if she didn't want to admit it. I don't believe that, Alex said firmly. Power doesn't have to come from violence. It can come from compassion, from understanding, from connection. Ileana was silent for a long moment, her eyes never leaving his. Then, slowly, she stood from her throne. Her movement was fluid, graceful, like a predator, preparing to strike. But there was no threat in her actions. She was simply observing, weighing his words, deciding what to do with them. You are different from the others, she said softly. Perhaps you are the key to something we have long forgotten. But that does not mean I will trust you. Alex nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I never asked you to. And with that, the tension in the room lifted just a little, the first crack in the walls that had separated them. The days that followed the meeting were long and tense. Alex had expected to return to his ship to prepare for the worst, but instead, Ileana ordered him to stay within the palace. She called it a study of sorts, though it felt more like a sentence than an invitation. The Alithians watched him closely, their eyes never straying far from him. There was no trust between them, but there was something else, something unspoken. Curiosity. He had been trained to navigate hostile environments, to speak with authority, to push through when things grew difficult. But nothing had prepared him for life among the Alithians. Their coldness was like a wall, thick and impenetrable. Every word, every gesture, every glance felt like it was weighed with meaning. And yet, no matter how hard he tried, Alex couldn't understand what was behind it all. He spent most of his time in a small, austere room, tucked away in a wing of the palace. He didn't mind the isolation. It gave him time to think, to reflect on everything that had happened. The words he had spoken to Ileana that day still echoed in his mind. I understand your fear. They had meant so much to him, but what had they meant to her? He had never seen a leader like Ileana. She was strong, unyielding, and above all, utterly alone. She ruled with an iron fist, and yet there was something fragile beneath the surface. He could see it in her eyes whenever she looked at him. A flicker of doubt, of hesitation. She wasn't the person she appeared to be. And Alex couldn't help but wonder what had made her so cold, so distant from the rest of the galaxy. Alex's thoughts were interrupted when the door to his room slid open. He looked up to see a tall Alithian standing in the doorway. It was Talon, the Queen's personal guard. His expression was unreadable, but the way he stood told Alex that he wasn't there for casual conversation. You will accompany me, Talon said, his voice flat and emotionless. Alex didn't respond immediately. He had grown accustomed to the Alithians' lack of warmth, but it still struck him as strange. They didn't speak the way humans did. There were no small talks, no jokes, no pleasantries. Everything was either business or silence. But he nodded and followed Talon without protest. The Elythian guard led him down a long hallway, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the cold walls. Talon didn't speak as they walked, and Alex was content to remain silent as well. He had learned that when dealing with the Elythians, it was best to wait for them to speak. There was no need to force words where they weren't wanted. They arrived at a large chamber, where several high-ranking Elythian officers stood waiting. Alex's heart quickened. He had no idea what this meeting was about, but he had a feeling it wasn't going to be friendly. Talon gestured for Alex to step forward. "The Queen will see you now." As Alex entered the room, his gaze immediately locked onto Ileana. She was standing near the far side of the chamber, surrounded by a group of her advisors. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that made Alex uneasy. "Human," Ileana said, her voice cold and distant. "You have been granted an audience. Speak." Alex swallowed hard. This wasn't the meeting he had expected. He had thought they would continue their talks of peace, of diplomacy, but instead, it seemed like another test, and this time, the stakes were much higher. He glanced around the room at the Elythian officers, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of suspicion and disdain. They were waiting for him to make a mistake, to show weakness. Alex couldn't afford to do that. He had to be careful. "I'm here to continue our talks," Alex said, his voice steady. "I want to find a way forward, to prevent conflict between our people." Ileana stepped forward, her presence dominating the room. "You speak of peace, but your people are not ready for it." "You are too young, too divided. How can you expect us to trust you?" Alex's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't what he had prepared for. This wasn't just a diplomatic discussion anymore. It was a challenge to everything he believed in. "I know we are young," Alex said, meeting Ileana's gaze. "But that is exactly why we need peace. We have learned from our mistakes, from our past wars. We don't want to make the same mistakes again." Ileana didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Your words are weak, humans. You cannot expect me to believe them just because you say them." Alex stood his ground. "I don't expect you to believe me, but I expect you to listen." Ileana's eyes narrowed, her lips curling slightly. For a moment, Alex thought she was about to dismiss him, to send him away in failure. But instead, she spoke again, this time with a hint of something Alex couldn't quite place. "Tell me, human," she said, her voice softer now, almost curious.
What makes you so different from the others? Alex paused. He had been asked that question before, by humans, by others.
But something about the way Ileana asked it felt different. She wasn't mocking him. She wasn't testing him. She was genuinely curious. And that was something Alex hadn't expected. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe I'm not different. Maybe I'm just trying to find a way that works. A way that doesn't end in more destruction." Ileana studied him for a long moment, her sharp gaze never leaving his face. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke again, her tone softer than before. "I see something in you," she said. "Perhaps it is the same thing I see in myself." Alex didn't know how to respond to that. For a moment, he just stood there, unsure of what was happening. He had expected her to reject him, to dismiss his plea for peace, but instead, Ileana had spoken to him like a person, not a pawn. "I don't know what it is," Ileana continued, almost to herself.
But I have been alone for so long, perhaps.
Perhaps I need to learn to trust someone again. Alex felt his heart skip a beat. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when the walls between them began to crack. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And for the first time, he felt like there was hope, real hope, for the future. As the conversation continued, Alex and Ilyana spoke more openly. The tension in the room didn't vanish completely, but something had changed. The Ilithian queen, once so distant, was beginning to open up, and for Alex, that was the first sign that peace wasn't as impossible as it had seemed. The meeting ended with no promises, no agreements. But when Alex left the room, he felt a small sense of victory. It wasn't much, but it was a step forward, a crack in the cold armor of the Ilithians. And that, he believed, was the first real chance at peace. The days that followed the meeting were filled with uncertainty. Alex couldn't help but feel that things were changing, but he didn't know if it was for better or worse. The queen had been quiet since their last conversation, and the Ilithian warriors watched him even more closely now. He had seen it before in their eyes, the suspicion, the distrust, but there was something else too, something in the way they looked at him, almost as if they were waiting for him to prove himself. Ilyana didn't give much away. She still carried herself with the same cold authority. But there was something different in the way she spoke to him now. Something softer, almost fragile, hidden behind the strength she had so carefully built over the years. Alex wasn't sure how to handle it, or even if he should try, but he had been taught to keep pushing forward, no matter what. His mission was still the same: to avoid war, to show the Ilithians that peace was possible. He had spent countless hours talking to the diplomats, strategizing and negotiating. But now, with Ilyana, it felt different. He wasn't just trying to talk to her about peace. He was trying to understand her, to reach her in a way no one ever had before. Alex spent most of his time alone, walking through the palace grounds. The vast gardens were beautiful in a way that made him feel small. Tall trees with glowing leaves lined the paths, and strange, colorful flowers grew in clusters along the stone walkways. The air smelled of something unfamiliar, fresh, yet foreign. It reminded him of how much there was left to learn, not just about the Ilithians, but about himself. He was walking alone one evening when he saw Ilyana standing by the edge of a reflective pond, gazing out at the distant mountains. Her silver hair flowed gently in the wind, and her posture was strong, but there was something in her expression that made her seem vulnerable. The way her eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something far beyond what was in front of her. Alex hesitated, unsure if he should approach. He had learned to keep his distance, to respect her space. But there was a quiet pull in him that made him move closer. He stopped just a few steps away from her, not wanting to intrude, but also unable to walk away. "You've been silent," Alex said, softly, breaking the stillness. "Is everything all right?" Ilyana didn't look at him, but her voice was clear and steady.
"I have been thinking."
"About what?"
"About you." Her words were slow, deliberate.
"About your kind. About the humans who come to me with promises of peace. Do you really believe that it is possible? That we can avoid war?" Alex didn't answer right away. He had heard those words before, from leaders, from soldiers, from people who believed peace was just a dream. But now, standing beside Ilyana, he felt the weight of her question in a way he hadn't expected. "I think," he said carefully, "that peace isn't something that just happens. It's something we have to work for, to fight for. We can't wait for it to come to us. We have to create it ourselves." Ilyana turned her head slightly, her sharp eyes meeting his. "And what if we fail? What if your people fail?" Alex's heart sank. He could see the fear in her eyes now, the doubt that had always been there hidden beneath her cold exterior. She didn't want to admit it, but she was afraid. Afraid that her people's endless battles had led them down a path where peace was no longer an option. "I don't think we will," Alex said quietly. "But even if we do, we can't give up trying."
We can't just give in to war because it's easier. Ilyana was silent for a long moment.
The wind blew through her hair, and the soft glow of the setting sun bathed the garden in a warm light. It felt like time had stopped, like the whole universe was holding its breath. Finally, Ilyana spoke again, her voice lower now, almost hesitant. "You're different from the others. Different from the diplomats who came before you. You don't just speak of peace."
"You believe in it?" Alex shook his head.
I'm not special. I'm just a person. Like you.
"I want the same things you want, to live without fear, to protect the people I care about." Ilyana's gaze softened, and for the first time she looked at him as if seeing him for who he was. Not just a human soldier, but someone who understood her struggle, her pain. There was no hostility in her eyes now, no suspicion. There was something closer to acceptance.
I have been alone for so long, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I have led my people through countless wars, through bloodshed and loss.
I have buried everything I once believed in just to keep them alive. I don't know if I can believe in peace anymore. Alex stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to carry that weight by yourself. I know it's hard, but there are others out there who want the same thing. There's a way forward, if you're willing to try. For a moment, Ilyana didn't respond. She just stared at him, her expression unreadable.
Alex held his breath, waiting for her to push him away, to reject him, to remind him that peace was impossible. But instead, she surprised him.
I don't know if I can trust you, she said, almost to herself, but I want to. The words hit Alex harder than he expected.
It wasn't a promise, and it wasn't an agreement. But it was something. It was the first time Ilyana had shown even a flicker of vulnerability. The first time she had allowed herself to hope. Alex smiled, though it was small and uncertain. That's a start. For the rest of the evening, they walked together in silence. There was no grand declaration of peace, no sudden shift in the Ilithian queen's heart. But something had changed between them. A connection had been made, something deep and unspoken. They were no longer enemies. They were two people, two leaders, trying to find a way forward. Later that night, as Alex lay in his bed, he thought about the conversation. He thought about the queen's words, about the way she had looked at him. For the first time since he arrived, Alex allowed himself to feel a small sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this, a way that didn't involve bloodshed or betrayal. The next day, Ilyana summoned him again. This time, there was no hostility in her eyes, only a quiet understanding. She didn't speak much, but the way she looked at him, the way she held herself, told Alex that she was ready to try. And that was enough. As they sat down to talk, Alex knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be many challenges, many moments when the path would seem impossible. But for the first time, he believed that peace was possible. And he wasn't going to give up on it. The next few days were filled with difficult conversations. Alex had been expecting resistance from the Ilithians, but the level of skepticism was more intense than he had imagined. The Ilithian Council convened regularly to discuss the future of their alliance with humanity, and every time Alex spoke, it was as if the room fell into silence, heavy with doubt. Yet, despite the resistance, there was something different now. Ilyana had become more involved in the discussions. She had not yet shown full support for Alex's vision, but she was listening more closely. The walls that had once been so high between them were starting to crumble. Even her closest advisors, who had been openly hostile toward humans, seemed to soften when she spoke. Ilyana had called for a private meeting. When Alex entered her chambers, he saw her standing by a window, looking out over the sprawling city below. The palace was quiet, the only sound being the faint hum of distant ships flying above. Her back was to him, but Alex knew she had heard him enter.
I didn't expect to see you again so soon, Alex said softly. Ilyana turned, her silver eyes meeting his.
She didn't speak right away, as if weighing her words carefully. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, her voice more vulnerable than he had ever heard it. About peace. About trying, even when it seems impossible. Alex's heart raced. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when the Queen might finally let go of her doubts and embrace a future where peace was possible. I've spent my life in war, Ileana continued, her voice steady but with a hint of sadness. I've seen the cost of it. I've seen how it changes people, how it tears them apart. I've led my people through battles that should never have happened. And now I wonder if I've spent all these years fighting for something that can never be won. Alex stepped forward slowly, trying not to crowd her. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but he needed her to know that he understood. War doesn't make us stronger. It just leaves us broken, Alex said, his voice calm. You've given everything for your people, Ileana. But peace isn't a weakness. It's a choice. It's something we build, together. Ileana's eyes softened, and for the first time since Alex had met her, she seemed to let down the guard she had kept up for so long. She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing just a little. I don't know if I can lead us to that peace, Ileana admitted. I don't know if I have the strength to let go of everything I've known, to trust in something I've never believed in. Alex took another step closer, now standing just a few feet away from her. You don't have to do it alone, he said quietly. None of us do. We can do this together.
For a moment, Ileana didn't speak. The silence between them was thick, full of unspoken thoughts and unexpressed feelings.
But then, very softly, she spoke. I can't promise you that it will work, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can promise that I will try. I will try, not just for my people, but for you, and for the future we both want. Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was what he had been hoping for. Not just an agreement, but a willingness to try. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that this was the first step towards something better. I can't ask for more than that, Alex replied, his voice filled with sincerity. They stood there for a few moments, simply looking at each other. There were no more words needed. Everything they had said before had been said with the weight of years of conflict and misunderstanding behind it. But now, in this moment, there was something else, something lighter, something full of potential. It wasn't a perfect solution. There would be challenges ahead, and there would still be those who resisted the idea of peace. But now, there was hope, and that hope was enough. As the days passed, the mood began to shift. The Elythian Council, though still wary, seemed to be coming around. There were talks about opening diplomatic channels between the humans and Elythians, and the discussions, though slow, were no longer filled with hostility. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was progress. Alex and Ileana continued to meet in private, discussing their plans for the future. They spoke of what peace could look like, a peace built on mutual understanding and respect, not on fear and dominance. It was a long road, but they both knew it was the only one worth traveling. One evening, after another tense meeting with the council, Ileana and Alex stood together on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the stars. The view was breathtaking, with the endless expanse of space stretching before them. I used to think the stars were a reminder of our strength, Ileana said softly, her eyes reflecting the distant lights. But now, I think they're a reminder of how small we are, and how much we still have to learn. Alex smiled and nodded. I think we're learning, every day. I hope so, she replied, her voice filled with a quiet determination. I really do. The silence that followed was comfortable. For the first time since their meeting, there was no pressure between them, no tension. Just the two of them, looking toward the future, uncertain but hopeful. Later that night, Ileana summoned Alex one last time. The council had agreed to a formal meeting the next day, a meeting that could determine the future of their relationship with humanity. This would be their moment to put everything they had worked for to the test. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, Ilyana said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. But I know this. We have to try. If we don't, then everything we've fought for, everything we've lost, will be for nothing. Alex nodded, understanding the weight of her words. We will try. Together. And so, as the night stretched on and the stars watched silently above them, Alex and Ilyana stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The path to peace would not be easy, and there would be obstacles ahead. But they had taken the first step. And that was all they needed, the courage to take the first step and the strength to walk it together.